Welcome to today's reading club. We are on chapter 9 of You Were Born Rich. Don't think in reverse. Let's get straight into our reading today. It starts off with a beautiful little poem called Forgive. That slight misdeed of yesterday, why should it mar today? The thing he said, the thing you did, have long since passed away. For yesterday was but a trial, today you will succeed. And for mistakes of yesterday will come some noble deed. Forgive yourself for thoughtlessness, do not condemn the past, for it is gone with its mistakes, their memory cannot last. Forget the failures and misdeed, for such experience rise. Why should you let your head be bowed? Lift up your hearts and eyes. Don't think in reverse. Let us not look back in anger, nor forward in fear, but around us in awareness. That quote's by Leyland Val Vanderwall. And he actually spent quite a lot of time with Bob in the early years, helping him to understand what was really causing the results in his life. Very influential man in Bob Proctor's life. You will never obtain any substantial measure of material wealth if you insist upon living your life as if you are looking back through the rearview mirror of your car. Nevertheless, this seems to be a very common error, which many people have turned into a pernicious habit. That is to say, many of us spend most of our present moments floundering mentally in the time zone of the dead and should be forgotten past. Excuse me. Let the dead bury the dead. Remember the old adage which says, let the dead bury the dead? In other words, what you want to do is stop looking back in your life and worrying about things which have already occurred and which you can no longer alter. For pursuing that kind of mental activity will never lead to any worthwhile accomplishments in your life. You should understand, moreover, that all of the great achievers of the past have been visionary figures. They were men and women who projected into the future and did not bell labor over things which had already passed. They thought of what could be rather than what already was, and then they moved themselves into action to bring these things into fruition. Think of the magnificent legacy which these forward-thinking individuals have left for us living today. Due to their formidable efforts, we are now able to enjoy breakfast in Paris, lunch in New York, and dinner in Toronto. We are now able to live our lives in brightness and light, 24 hours a day if we so desire. We can hear the voice of a loved one on the other side of the ocean merely by pressing some buttons on a telephone. All of these miraculous possibilities and so much more are available to us, simply because ordinary human beings like you and me have built extraordinary images on the screen of our minds of things which have never been done before. The pioneering spirit of men and women of all faith, creeds, and colours has been put to great use. Those praiseworthy individuals who are able to look into the future, to see what could be rather than what already was, and then they ignored those who scoffed and said it couldn't be done. Also understand that all great achievers always expect to do great things, and then they turn around and do them. Do not be misled by your sensory factors. We are endowed with the same basic mental tools which the Wrights, the Edisons, the Bells possessed, and we all have the God-given ability to employ those tools just as they did. All of us have been blessed with the mental capacity to gaze into the future and to see our lives in a richer and more satisfying state. Therefore, regardless of the present circumstances in which you find yourself, clearly understand that you can build the image of something new in your mind, something that far surpasses anything that has occurred up until now. You have the ability to realize the result in the physical world. It could not be more clear that all of us have been born rich in the sense of having a magnificent God-given potential which we owe ourselves to nature. Just how great is this human potential? Let's check with the experts. Dr. Alexander Rich, Professor of Biophysics at MIT. He has estimated our central nervous system contains from 10 to 100 million cells. Each one of these has a storage capacity equal to that of a large computer. If his estimates are even close to being correct, it would imply that the human mind has the capacity to store all the known information in the world with room to spare. Other specialists in the field of human creativity are similarly convinced that all people have uncharted reservoirs of untapped potential locked up within the confines of their incredible minds. For example, Dr. W. Ross Addy of the Space Biology Laboratory and of the Brain Research Center in UCLA has said, the ultimate creative capacity of your brain may be, for all practical purposes, infinite. One must conclude, therefore, the more a person delves into the potential of the human being, the more that person will become aware of how great he or she truly is. And the more that person becomes aware of his or her own potential, the easier it will be to build images of ideas or things which have never even been contemplated up until this present time. Now pause for just a moment and reflect upon the degree to which you have been utilizing this power to improve the quality of your own life and the lives of the people that surround you. Just reflect. Start to think about how much you've really been using this incredible power that is within you to improve the quality of your own life, but also the lives of everybody around you. If you know for a fact that you have not been tapping into these great reservoirs of talent and ability, then you should ask yourself very candidly, why have you not been? For if you do this, you might just discover you have been telling yourself for such a long period of time that you can't do certain things, that you have actually manufactured a genuine mental block in your own conscious mind. But you should remove these mental blocks by putting yourself into a very relaxed state, and by then consciously becoming aware that you can do the things you want to do. You probably just don't know how to go about doing them. If this is the position which you currently find yourself in, then you should start getting excited, for the ideas which are being brought to you in the pages of this book will show you exactly how to go about doing the things you most wish to do. Also, please be advised you need not feel regret because you have not fully utilized this great power in the past. For the truth is, there are few people anywhere who understand the real truth concerning their own hidden resources. That is the very reason why so few people live dynamic, exciting lives, and so many people lived confused, unproductive lives. Moreover, just on the basis of what you have read up until this point, you have already far surpassed most people with respect to your understanding of this important potential. It would appear to be the case that the masses of people have always lived their lives in the past tense. That is to say, by virtue of holding on to old images. Are you holding on to old images? They have limited themselves to only half a life. Indeed, even as far back as the turn of the century, William James, one of the world's most distinguished early psychologists, reached the conclusion the average individual was using only a small portion of his or her real potential, perhaps as little as 10%. And that is still true today. The average person is only operating at around about 10% of their true capacity. He considered this to be one of his most important psychological discoveries. And in this connection, he wrote, most people live, whether physically, intellectually, or morally, in a very restricted circle of their potential being. They make use of a very small portion of their possible consciousness and of their soul's resources in general, much like a person who out of their whole bodily organism gets into the habit of using and moving only their little finger. One might have expected that in this modern age in which we now live, James' findings would have become anachronistic. But unfortunately, this is just not true, for the sad reality is that most of us are continuing to live our lives in much the same manner as our grandparents did. The reason we do this, you will be interested to know, is that most of us have never been trained to measure our true abilities correctly. Indeed, during the formative years of our lives, we have been inculcated with the belief that our results in school would be the factor determining whether we would win or lose at life. This notion has been fired at us from virtually every conceivable angle until eventually most of us have not only come to accept it intellectually, but we have actually become emotionally involved with the idea as well. The result is the lives of untold numbers of individuals have been needlessly sacrificed on the altar of failure. I feel time has come for us to free ourselves from these mental shackles of the past. Let us therefore begin this healing process by getting in touch with the wide variety of beautiful images which we have the ability to form on the screen of our own minds. Then let us begin to actually accept to receive the physical manifestation of each one of these images into our own lives. How often do you think about a beautiful image, but you fail to accept the physical manifestation into your life? That is what you must learn how to do, how to accept the physical manifestation of the good you desire into your life. Remember, if we are able to see ourselves doing, being, or having something on the screen of our conscious minds, then we are able to be, do, or have it on the physical plane of life as well. If you're following along in your workbook, you want to highlight and underline that sentence. You see, the adage is true. What you see is what you get. Therefore, always look forward into the bright future, which lies just ahead of where you are currently situated. Let me make it clear that I'm not referring in this context to the things which you can actually see with your physical sense of sight. That is looking at what is or what was. Remember, I'm referring to your creative inner eye, which enables you to see what can be. The creative inner eye is that magnificent part of your personality which permits you to see into the vast reaches of the creative non-physical world. This is the area where all life begins or originates. The past, conversely, is the place where all life ends. But unfortunately, it is also the place where 95% of the people spend 95% of their time, which is sadly also their life. For example, it is an accepted ritual in our culture for old friends to spend hours upon hours reminiscing or harping back on the good old days of yesteryear. Hours upon hours of wasted time, of precious present living time is squandered, discussing people who are dead and gone, or reflecting upon things which used to be but are no more. In fact, there are actually numerous individuals who spend their days collecting things from the past, or antiques as they are sometimes called. These people collect everything from old matchboxes to antique furniture. Then there is another large category of people who consume the majority of their waking hours reliving in their minds past negative events which have occurred in their lives. They either spend valuable waking hours thinking of some past injustice which someone has done to them, or possibly about some unkind remark which someone had once directed in their direction. They bemoan or agonize over past failures or missed opportunities which they somehow let slip through their fingers. Unfortunately for them, these individuals maintain such a negative vibration that there is not even the most remote possibility of a positive thought entering their level of consciousness. Indeed, the only thing this type of thinking will ever create is resentment and or guilt, both deadly and emotional states. But until these poor souls come to terms with the fact that it is them themselves who have been the authors of their own misfortune, and until they realize it is up to them to alter the course of their own lives, they are doomed to repeat their past failures over and over again. As long as they persist in believing that others are the cause of their problem, they cannot be successful, because of course you can never successfully change anyone but yourself. Therefore, to the extent that these people hold on to their false beliefs, they will continue to think in reverse. And it goes without saying, you cannot move ahead while your mind is traveling in the opposite direction. That's why our coaching program is called Thinking into Results. The results you want, the goals you want, and thinking forward, bringing the future into the present tense. Take a good look at yourself. Could you be one of the individuals who I have just portrayed? If you are, I would strongly suggest that you bring your mind to a screeching halt, then reevaluate your present position and re-examine your future goal. Look straight ahead and fill your consciousness with great and grand thoughts of what you ultimately could be and what you eventually can be. Become acutely aware of the direction your mind is traveling, because ultimately that is the way your life is going to unfold. You want to highlight and put a big star against that paragraph. Polaroid camera analogy. I have often likened the human mind and the material world to a Polaroid camera and a photograph. For once you have snapped a picture, the course for that photograph has been incontrollably set. There is a short gestation period which must elapse, but then the photograph must begin to appear, and it will do so exactly as it has been originally shot. To carry our analogy one step further, I would suggest that the shutter of the camera is quite like the conscious mind, in that it is responsible for snapping the picture. Similarly, the camera itself may be likened to the subconscious mind, because it is responsible for doing the work. I was teaching a call on this yesterday, actually, with a group of clients of mine, and teaching them about their subconscious mind. And I said, your subconscious mind is like the engine room. It's the powerhouse. It'll do all the heavy lifting for you if you just know how to program it correctly. Finally, the photograph is analogous to your results, as it merely shows the world the physical replica of the picture which you have already taken with your mind. Clearly, if you were to take a picture of the same object over and over again, you would do nothing more than reproduce the same photograph over and over again. Yet this is precisely the course which many people set for their own lives. Therefore, you must constantly be reminding yourself that if you persist in thinking in reverse, you will only produce the same results in your life over and over again. If you wish to change this pattern, on the other hand, you must look bravely into the future. You must be thinking into results, which lies ahead, and see yourself already doing what you now only dream about doing someday. You must bring the future into the present tense. Patty's cruise. Patty Moir first came to my seminar with her parents when she was only 11 years old. By the age of 15, she was already speaking in the seminars and sharing with the audience the manner in which a concept in the seminar had moved her from failing miserably in French at school to honours grades in a relatively short period of time. 5 years later, she was working with me in the seminar business. One day I noticed her attitude seemed to be slipping badly, and appeared to me that she was not enjoying herself one iota. Note that these are first telltale symptoms of an individual who is without a goal. So I asked her what it was she really wanted, and her immediate response was, "What do you mean by that?" I explained to her that since she wasn't working towards anything, she didn't have anything to look forward to, and this made life extremely difficult, to say the least. Then she said, "But I don't have any money, so I can't do anything." I reminded her, however, that it doesn't even cost one penny to want or to dream. A radiant smile suddenly crossed Patty's face, and she told me what she wanted more than anything else was to go on a South Sea cruise. I said to her, "That would probably be a lot of fun," I said to her. I told her I had done it a number of times myself, and I described to her how beautiful it was. I also expressed my expectation that she would have a truly marvelous time. I pointed out, moreover, that she would retain the memories of the trip for the rest of her life, and she could then relive them over and over again whenever she desired. At this juncture, I asked her what was holding her back. Again, the same response was forthcoming from Patty. I don't have any money. This type of negative thinking had been crippling her by preventing her from undertaking something in her life which she felt was very important. But the real reason I bring this story up here is to illustrate that even though Patty was mature, had no ties, and no real reason not to go on this trip, her own thinking was holding her back from doing so. Clearly, she was a young lady who was thinking in reverse, who had thoroughly convinced herself it was lack of finances which thwarted her desire. But of course, that just wasn't the case. Nevertheless, whatever the source of her real frustration may have been, it was certainly holding her back from realizing her dream. Understand that untold numbers of people are making the same error Patty did daily. It is with such great tragedy. Perhaps you have been making this same error in your own life. If you have, I hope Patty's story will be an inspiration you need to get moving in the direction you wish to go. In any case, one day Patty and I went to lunch together and we had a very serious discussion. I said, listen, Patty, if you really want to go on a cruise, you must quit looking back and looking at what is, because looking at present results is a very common form of thinking in reverse. Now, I'm going to say that again. Looking at your present results is a very common error of thinking in reverse. You must commence to look ahead, and you must start applying what we profess in the seminars. So go ahead and book your trip, make definite plans, and don't give one thought to anything going wrong. Know that whatever you need for the goal to materialize will begin to be attracted to you as soon as you accept the idea that you are going, and make definite plans to do so. If it is money that you need, you will have it. It might not all fall into place until the very last moment, but if you see it and you believe it and you expect it, you most certainly will receive it. I won't bore you with the details of how things all came together, but I will tell you they did come together in wondrous and unexpected ways. Eventually, Patty attracted more money than she required for her trip. It was at the airport at approximately 6 a.m. I was at the airport at approximately 6 a.m. with Patty's parents on the morning that she left, and it was a tremendously gratifying experience for me to see her face aglow with nervous excitement. Suffice to say, she went on her cruise. She had enough courage to travel alone, and she enjoyed a trip that she will surely remember all the days of her life. But what was even more important than that trip is the self-awareness Patty gained from the experience, for she now knows through her own personal experience that if you think in reverse, you will only see reasons why you can't. However, if you will begin to look into the future with a positive, even expectant attitude, you will see that you can do. Patty will be able to apply this awareness toward the achievement of all of her future wishes. Have you been dreaming of a trip? If you have, go out and book your reservations. It doesn't matter if the reservations are for 6 months or a year from now. Make them immediately and then enjoy the anticipation which precedes the actual event. I honestly believe that in Patty's particular case, the excitement leading up to her trip was equally as enjoyable and exciting as the actual trip itself. Not to mention the enjoyment which she will derive from the memories of her trip, which she will carry with her for the rest of her life. The probable reason that so few people make plans or set goals similar to the one discussed above is that most people are unable in their own mind to figure out how everything necessary will come together. But you must understand you do not need to know how everything will come together. All you have to understand is the underlying principle by which your good comes. Namely, everything which you receive in life comes by virtue of the law of attraction. The Paul Hutsey story in chapter 3 is an excellent example of the conscientious, intelligent, hardworking person who was attempting to do something which was tantamount to a person jumping off the front porch of his home and then is expecting somehow to land on the roof. You know that this is never going to happen. Yet Paul had spent 20 years, number one, letting the sales sheets in his office control the image that he held of his operation, and 2, attempting to improve the results he was getting through sheer force, dogged determination, and long, hard years and hours of agonizing toil. But it just doesn't have to be like that. Everybody, by doing all of these things, certainly will improve their results to some degree, but they will never witness a dramatic improvement in their results until they have first altered the image which they are holding in their mind's eye. I call to mind as I read that a client of mine, Rachel, she's been working with me for a couple of years now, and I remember her calling me, and I think she saw a tweet that I put out and had been following me for a while on Twitter, and she said, I want one of these quantum leaps that you talk of. And she got herself into thinking into results then and there on the spot, and took her company growth, her and her husband company growth, to well and truly over $1 million. They're on track for $3 or $4 million now. And they really did make that quantum leap, that dramatic improvement in their results. Paul Hutsey is a prime illustration of a person who fully believed he was looking ahead, when in actual fact he was guilty of thinking almost completely in reverse. He thought he was looking ahead, but in actual fact he was looking completely in reverse. For he spent the vast majority of his time consciously focusing on present results. Are you doing that? Present thoughts? Are you focused on present thoughts? And present images? Are you holding images of the present? That's all thinking in reverse. It's never going to be able to create you what you really want. If you have been guilty of allowing your sales sheets, your bank account, the x-rays the doctor takes of your body control the way you feel, think, or view your sales, financial position, or health, I can assure you that just as certain as it's going to get dark tonight, there will not be any marked improvement in your life in any of these areas. On the other hand, if you let the present physical results serve only as an indication of the images which you have been holding in the past, then you proceed by virtue of your own higher mental faculties to look into the bright future and to build an image of the good that you desire. Just as Patty and Paul did, you will see the image materialize. But again, as long as you continue to let your present and past results control your thinking process, you will never live to see your dreams come true. Therefore, look up, look ahead, and form the image of the life you choose to live, and then everything you touch and come in contact with will grow and expand and express itself in a greater and greater way. Individuals who are thinking in reverse very rarely, if ever, originate ideas which lead them to providing meaningful service to others. The reason for this is that they are only able to see what someone else has already done. As a result of their limited mindset, the rewards which they ultimately receive in life are destined to be equally limited. The 333 story. I was doing a seminar which ran from Thursday night to Sunday in Deerhurst Lodge, which is a resort approximately 100 miles north of Toronto. On the Friday night, a tornado swept through Barrie, Ontario, a town about 40 miles south of Deerhurst. The tornado killed a dozen people and did millions of dollars of damage. On the Sunday night, as I was coming home, I stopped the car when I got out to Barrie. I got out on the side of the highway and looked around. It was a mess. Everywhere I looked, there were smashed houses and cars upside down. That same night, another gentleman, Bob Templeton, was driving down the highway. He and I had never met. However, an idea from my seminar was about to bring us together in a lasting friendship. He stopped to look at the disaster just as I had. Only his thoughts were different than mine. And Bob was the vice president of Telemedia Communications, a company which owns a string of radio stations in Ontario and Quebec. As he stood there viewing the disaster, he thought there must be something he could do for these people with the radio stations he held. That thought kept returning to his mind that night and all the next day. The following night, I was doing another seminar in Toronto. Bob Templeton and Bob Johnson, another vice president from Telemedia, came in and stood at the back of the room. They were evaluating my seminar, trying to decide if I could help their company reach its goals, which I ultimately did. Because of Bob Templeton's influence, I subsequently worked for the entire Canadian broadcasting industry. He loved what I was doing in my seminars because it was in harmony with his way of thinking. Bob Templeton became fascinated with the laws of the universe, particularly the law of polarity. as it is often referred to as the law of opposites. This law clearly states everything has an opposite. You cannot have an up without a down, a hot without a cold, or an in without an out. But by the same token, if you can figure out why something you want cannot be done, by law, you must be able to figure out how it can be done. People who accomplish great things are aware of the negative, however, they give all of their mental energy to the positive. After the seminar, Bob Templeton went back to his office. He told me it was late, but this one idea he had picked up had him very excited. It also had him committed to the idea of raising millions of dollars and giving it to the people who had been caught in the tornado. And he was going to raise the money now, immediately. Furthermore, he was not remotely interested in why he couldn't. The following Friday, he called all of his executives at Telemedia into his office. At the top of the flip chart in bold letters, he wrote 3 threes. He said to his executives, "How would you like to raise $3 million 3 days from now in 3 hours and give the money to the people in Barrie?" There was nothing but silence in the room. Finally, someone said, "Templeton, you're crazy. There is absolutely no way that we could raise $3 million 3 days from now in 3 hours." Bob said, "Wait a minute. I didn't ask if we could or even if we should. I just asked if you would like to." Bob Templeton was wise. He was appealing to the charitable side of their nature. It was important for those present to openly admit that this was something they wanted to do. Bob Templeton knew that his new idea could show anyone how to accomplish anything they wanted by working with the law. They all said, "Sure, we'd like to." He then drew a large T underneath the 333. On one side, he wrote, "Why we can't." On the other side, he wrote, "How we can." Under the words, "Why we can't," Bob Templeton drew a large X. As he placed the X on the flip chart, he said, "Now, there is no place to record the ideas of why we think we can't do the $3 million in 3 hours, 3 days from now." He continued by explaining, when anyone calls out an idea which suggests why we can't do it, everyone else must yell out "next" as loud as they can. That will be our command to go to the next idea. Ideas are like cars on a train. One follows the other. We will keep saying "next" until a positive idea arrives. Bob smiled and continued to explain that opposite the X, so this is where they have no space now to write down any idea about why they can't do it. On the other side, we're going to write "how we can." I will write down every idea that we come up with on how we can raise $3 million in 3 hours, 3 days from now. He also suggested in a very serious tone of voice that everyone will remain in the room until we figure it out. We are not only going to think of how we can do it, we are going to originate the ideas and we're going to execute them. Silence again. Finally, someone says we could do a radio show across Canada. Bob said, "That's a great idea," and he wrote it down under "how we can." Before he had written it on the right-hand side of the flip chart, someone said, "You can't do a radio show across Canada. We don't have radio stations across Canada." Since Telemedia only had stations in Ontario and Quebec, you must admit that was a pretty valid objection. However, someone in the back of the room, in a rather soft tone, said, "Next." Bob Templeton replied, "Doing a radio show is how we can. That idea stays." But this truly did sound like a ridiculous idea, because radio stations are very competitive. They usually don't work together, and to get them to do so would be virtually impossible according to the standard way of thinking. All of a sudden, someone suggested you could get Harvey Kirk and Lloyd Robinson, the biggest names in Canadian broadcasting, to anchor the show. These gentlemen are anchors of national stature in the Canadian television industry. Someone clearly spoke out saying they're not going to get on the radio, but at that point, the group yelled, "Next!" Bob said that was when the energy shifted. Everyone got involved, and it was absolutely amazing how fast and furious the creative ideas began to flow. That was on a Friday. The following Tuesday, they had a radiothon where 50 radio stations from all across the country agreed to work in harmony for such a great cause. They felt it didn't matter who got the credit as long as the people in Barrie got the money. Harvey Kirk and Lloyd Robinson anchored the show, and they succeeded in raising $3 million in 3 hours, 3 days from now. You see, you can have whatever you want. All things are possible when you put your focus on how you can, and next, every idea telling you why you can't. This may be a difficult exercise in the beginning, however. When you persist nexting any or all negative concepts, the positive flow of ideas will roar into your marvelous mind. I remember doing this exercise at a VIP client day a couple of years ago, and I had a client in the had a couple, husband and wife team, in the hot seat with me doing some coaching. We had about 40 or 50 clients in the room, and they had we 333. They needed $40,000 investment in their business by the end of the weekend, by Monday essentially. And this was a Friday afternoon. We did this activity, and we had everybody in the room work on this idea with them. And by the Monday, they had the $40,000 in their bank account. This is powerful when you get into studying this. Alfred Adler, the renowned psychologist, coined the extraordinary phrase, "I am grateful to the idea that has used me." There can be no doubt that creative, forward-thinking ideas literally breathe new life into every fiber of your being. They awaken a part of you that you never even knew was sleeping. Bob Templeton never received 5 cents for the leadership role he played in marshalling 50 radio stations from right across Canada to raise $3 million for the people of Barrie, Ontario in Canada. However, you must remember that this is truly an orderly universe. God's way of running this show is exact. When you put good out, it must come back. I shared this story when it happened with 2 friends of mine, Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. They were so intrigued by the story, they published it in their book, Chicken Soup for the Soul. I actually met Jack Canfield, when was it? October last year? I spoke at Bob Proctor's Paradigm Shift event in Los Angeles, and he was in the audience. And he came up to me after the event and he said, "That speech, that presentation that you just gave was as good as I have ever seen anybody on stage deliver a presentation." So that was a nice compliment to get from Jack Canfield. He came up and shook my hand. I was recently doing a satellite television broadcast for Remax Real Estate and with Mark Victor Hansen, and he was telling me that at last count, they had sold 6 million copies of their book. He also told me they are constantly receiving letters from people who read the 333 story and use it to perform similar mental magic in their own lives. Think of it. Millions upon millions of people are making positive things happen in their lives because Bob Templeton would not listen to the reasons why he and his staff could not raise $3 million in 3 hours, 3 days from now. By the way, Bob Templeton has told me he and his staff have formed the habit of 333ing their wants, and as a result, he has gone on to become president of the New Cap Broadcasting Company, a highly profitable corporation with stations right across Canada. It is in my opinion that Bob Templeton has set up a force for good that will follow him wherever he goes. Profit has become his second name. Begin at once to 333 all of your wants, and profit will follow you as well. Now, I'm going to put a link on this video. If you would like to join me in my Thinking into Results coaching program, you can click the link and you can follow through the pages and enroll yourself today into my coaching program. Don't let the money for a second even slow you down. You've heard it here before. When you truly want something, when you really want to get into the benefits of this and experience it in every single area of your life, you will find everything that you need to start working with me. I guarantee it. So if that is you right now, listening or watching this, make a committed decision and click the link and come and join the Thinking into Results. Stop thinking in reverse or looking at past results and circumstances. Make a committed decision today and get yourself into thinking into results and start to bring the future into the present tense. And don't let the money, the time, the investment for a second even slow you down. It'll be single-handedly the best decision and the best investment that you've made in this year and for the rest of your life. And it'll just keep getting better. I guarantee it. So I'll pop that link in the comments for you today as well. That's it today. Chapter 10, we move on to the vacuum law of prosperity. So I look forward to being back online with you tomorrow morning. I'm Karen Brook. Have a great day.